Hi, hello, welcome to GameDev Meetup 58. Already forgot the number. Okay, let's start with the presentations, and the first presentation will be from Roman Lamtev, who made the soundtrack for Lazy Galaxy. Applauses, please. Thank you.
Čau visiem. Es stāstīšu angliski. Es domāju, ka neviena problēma nekad nebūs. Cool. Right. Test. Whatever. Right. So, hi everyone. A friend of mine asked me to come here and tell you about making video game music, or as I like to call it, that. I'm not particularly good at this thing, and I don't really have that much experience at talking in front of groups where your presentation doesn't start with, "Hi, my name is Roman and I'm an alcoholic," but I'll try to get through this and drag you with me, and hopefully you'll get some useful or at least interesting information from this presentation. Right, so first things first, the stuff you might need to know about me is that I've been making music for quite a while, and when I started I was absolutely rubbish at it, and I like to believe that over time I got gradually better, but I can't tell for sure because maybe just my perception of how shit I am got, skewed. But yeah, I have no formal musical education or music production education. I have only basic knowledge of music theory, and that did not stop me from recording 3 albums and over 60-ish songs and making soundtracks for 2 indie games and a documentary. Although, to be honest, I didn't make the soundtrack for the documentary per se. They just approached me and said, "We like that song, can we take it?" And I just went, "Yeah, go ahead." So that's that. And ever since I started making music back in the day, I was exceptionally interested in the specific area of music that I felt didn't get enough recognition, enough spotlight, which is specifically the soundtrack music. Because if you look at it, what soundtracks do is very unique because they need to achieve a lot with very little. Because, I mean, when you have a soundtrack in your game or in a movie or series, whatever, it has a purpose. It needs to create a certain mood. It needs to have a certain feel, to drive a person to a certain feeling. And that is difficult to do, especially if you consider that if you create a melody or a track that is too sophisticated, too complex, then it will start drawing attention from the main content, from the game itself, from the movie itself. So what you need to do is create something that does a lot with minimum input, with simple melodies, with simple arrangements. Otherwise, it'll get distracting. Luckily for me, ever since I started, there were lots of games with fantastic soundtracks. I had a lot to look up to and to work from, and so, I don't know, here's some examples of the games from back then and now that I think have fantastic soundtracks, and there is something similar about them. Well, most of them, not the, but who knows at least 3 of these games? Alright, that's good. Right, so can anyone tell me what is similar in the soundtracks of these games?
They're epic.
Yes, they are epic, but something else. Well, yeah, but it's soundtrack music is mostly instrumental music in most cases, so that's not exactly it.
Guitar, bass guitar, without words.
Almost. That's quite similar to instrumental music, but no, I mean the thing that is they have in similar is strong percussive elements. So the thing that I just mentioned about your soundtrack in a game is that you need to keep it quite simple, not to make it draw too much attention from your content, but at the same time you can achieve quite a lot with percussion. Because the thing is that with percussive elements, they only have rhythmics in them. They don't have like tonal differences. So your brain perceives them sort of in a simpler way. Therefore, you can add layers to the music. You can make it more nuanced, you can have more with less, basically, because all you're adding, if you're keeping to the simple time signatures and more or less predictable rhythms, you can build up your track and still your brain will perceive it as not too complex, not draw too much attention. And that way you have epic music that is pumping you up in the background and still you're concentrated on the game and on the content. Anyway, today I'll speak about a specific soundtrack that I made for a friend of mine, which is the Lazy Galaxy soundtrack. And I'm a firm believer in mixing digital instruments and real-life instruments, because if you only have digital instruments, everything sounds way too mechanic, well, way too dry. And if you only have real-life instruments, it's really, really difficult and extremely expensive to get a decent sound that is up to the standard that you wanted to work up to. So this is the first part of the equipment that I use, which is the physical equipment. And as you can see, except for the guitar, everything's pretty cheap. So if anyone's interested in, you know, starting out and playing stuff at home or recording, your basic setup can set you back maybe 300, 400, and you're good to go. But that's just the basics. And don't look at the guitar. It could have been a way cheaper guitar and achieved the same results. It's just I had this one, so I had to use it. But the difficult part starts with the digital instruments and the plugins and everything else that you need to use. So the first thing you need for creating music, obviously, is the software that you're going to do everything in, which is called DAWs, or I have no idea how you pronounce that correctly, but that's the abbreviation. And oh shit, yeah. That is where you record all the instruments. That is where you do all the mixing. You apply all the effects and.
Sound.
What?
Yes.
We've lost this. Oh yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So. Where was I? Right. Yeah. The DAW. So you can probably get a cheaper one if you search for an older version. But still, if you want to do everything officially and later make music with or make money with your music and release it, then you need to procure the tools for that. The tools are extremely expensive. So this is a basic setup that I used specifically for recording the soundtrack of this game. And I'll show you how it sounds a little bit later. But this is pretty basic and not very expensive. There are even some free plugins, and I tried to work with that. I stuck to the stuff that I have officially bought because, again, this is a commercial project. So it needs to be that way. I'll later show you something that I made not very officially, and you'll be able to hear the difference. For example, if you have an input of, I don't know, $100, $1,000, or say $5,000 in the sound libraries, plugins, and everything. Right. So with all of this, okay. YouTube was better because it would be able to scroll through it, and the second track is right after this one, right? Okay. What I mentioned previously, the cosmic elements, they're pretty much drawing the track because everything else you hear there is really simplistic. If it was without percussion, it would just get lost and boring. But like this, it sort of delivers the feel you want from it. Probably go to the next one. So that was the main theme from the Lazy Galaxy, and this is the battle theme. As you can see, you're not hearing that many instruments in the music, despite the fact that quite a lot of libraries were used in it. It's because you use quite a lot to add the atmosphere, to add the depth into the track, to make it sound sort of interesting. I was in no way inspired by the Doom soundtrack when I wrote this. Not at all. as I mentioned, everything is really expensive. So if you want to make music, you only have two options, which are visible right here. And the option I just showed you, which sounded quite minimalistic, was the second one, because again, it was commercial, it had to be that way. But I also want to show you the option on the left, just for shits and giggles, because at one point I was really interested in seeing what I could do if I didn't have the limitations of resources, and that sounded quite different. Again, the production is mine, so it's not perfect, but you can probably hear the difference in the way the track sounds. You get the idea. So again, the resources, they limit you quite a lot. Right, having said all that, and not having given you a lot of useful information for you specifically making a soundtrack or ordering a soundtrack for the game that you develop, here are some pinpoints that I actually learned when working on video game soundtracks that I like to share with you. And again, it's important to understand that this is not my primary means of survival. So I do have a proper job, as they call it, and this is my hobby that eats up all of my resources and the free time and probably my soul as well. But I really do like it, and I'd like to share that with you. So the first thing that I've already mentioned is that if you want to make your track more interesting without drawing too much attention, use the percussive elements. That helps a lot. Secondly, what is really important is the perfect loop, because the track that you're going to use for the main theme or menu or something, it's going to get looped a lot. And if you are not able to loop it perfectly, even if there's some tiny glitches, every time it's still going to break the immersion. So the person playing he's going to lose that feel of the game, at least for a second, every time that happens. Depending on the length of the track, that can vary in terms of how much it impacts the feeling of the game. But it's still quite important. It's not that hard to do. So if you keep that in mind, then you're able to maintain the perfect immersion into the game in terms of the audio track. Another really important thing that I learned when working on the Lazy Galaxy is that not everybody is able to even notice when your sound effects that you use for key bindings or for menus or something like that, just mouth clicks, they can be dissonant with the soundtrack, and some people don't even notice. But for anyone who's working with music, and even if you're not working with music subliminally, you have that dissonant moments in the soundtrack. When you play the game, it's still gonna bug you, it's still gonna annoy you on some subliminal level. So if you're not sure in which key your soundtrack is written, or if it varies a lot, just try to stick to some percussive sound effects or sound effects that are not tonal. So you can be sure that whenever you click a mouse or something, it does not create a dissonance with the soundtrack in the background. Another thing is that, as you probably know, the loudness war has been going on for 10, 15 years, I don't know, which means that basically for quite a while now, the audio engineers have figured out the idea that to make the track more interesting for people in terms of to make it hook you up instantly when you turn it on, the easiest way to do that is to make it louder. So if it comes up in a shuffled playlist or on the radio or something, if it's louder, it instantly grasps your attention. Everything else just seems inferior after that. They've been doing that for quite a while, and the price for that is quality, because the only way you can make something louder is artificially suppressing certain frequencies and enhancing the other ones. So for the human ear, what we usually perceive as loudness is the high frequency. So what they do, they boost that, and they need to cut down on the low frequencies. And just generally overcompress the track and push all the instruments up to make it louder. And that makes you lose all the dynamics, all the nuances, all the little things that make your music interesting. And that is not relevant in gaming, because you are in charge. You're the king of how loud everything's gonna sound and how you put it all together. There are no other songs, other artists, it's just your stuff. and you can keep the loudness to the level you want it to be, and maintain all the little idiosyncrasies, all the intricacies of the music you've created there. In that way, adding more depth to it and more character. Right, as I mentioned previously as well, that the soundtrack needs to be quite simple, not to draw too much attention from the main product, but at the same time, keep in mind that it's going to loop a lot, it's going to repeat a lot. So if certain points draw too much attention to themselves, then at a certain point they will just get annoying and again distracting. So try to maintain sort of interesting but not overly complex melodies that are pleasant to listen to over and over and over and over and over again. Now, blending the instruments, also I mentioned. And here what it's important to do is to make sure that you create the basis, the foundation of your soundtrack with the digital instruments. Because you need extremely expensive equipment and instruments to get the quality you want from the real ones. So what you do, you get the libraries, you use them for percussive elements, for bass, for basic atmospheres to envelop you in the music. And then you can add character at different layers by adding real-life instruments. They're not going to sound as polished, not going to be as good a quality, but at the same time they're going to make your soundtrack come alive, because it's not going to sound just mechanic and dead. And finally, I'm not sure how many people will benefit from this here. It's a bit more musical points, but a lot of people are afraid of experimenting with dissonant and atonal elements, chromatic elements in their music. And that is the stuff you usually hear in horror films and in thrillers when they're trying to build up the sort of the anxiety, the anticipation for the resolution of certain kinds. And you can really, really use that in for example, battle themes or boss fights to sort of build up the anticipation, to make the player go, oh shit, something's gonna happen. And you need to not be afraid to use those elements, because a lot of people are. Right. I think that was the only useful slide for everyone in this presentation, but nevertheless, we got through it. And to summarize, it is, okay, so this whole making music process, it's fucking complex. I had no idea how difficult it was when I got into it. I sort of regret it now, but there's no way back. The amount of money, time, and effort you spend on it is incredible. And if you want to get any good at it, you need to just keep going like with everything else. So if you have local composers, support them. Their lives are miserable. And yeah, stuff you already know, just pay attention to the music you use in your game, because a great soundtrack can make a mediocre game amazing, and a bad soundtrack can make a good game, you know, not very good. I think that's about it, really. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Questions?
Oh shit, question. Yeah.
At which stage did you start producing music? I mean, how much game did you play to feel, and how iterative was the process?
Right, I started right as soon as I got interested in the process. I started trying to do stuff, but as I mentioned, I was absolutely rubbish at it, because I had no idea what I was doing.
I mean, like this game in particular.
Okay, this game particularly, you mean at which point of the game's development I started creating the soundtrack?
Yeah.
So I had the basic, I guess the alpha version of the game, so I saw the gameplay, I know what it was going to be, and in addition to that, the person making the game expressed what he wanted to hear in it and sent examples saying, well, I think, you know, that would work. And then we discussed that maybe for this particular genre you could add that. And then I started thinking on how you could actually combine the elements that I know how to work with and what he wanted, and we got the end result. So it was a mutual effort.
Any more questions? Okay.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So the next presentation will be from Laura Wilson, and she will tell us about opportunities for artists and animators about 2D. So.
Okay. Okay. Jāizmanto šis, jā? Jā? Nē? Ar boltu. Oh, works. Okay. Hi everyone. For those who don't know, my name is Laura Wilsona, and today I would like to talk with you about learning opportunities for 2D artists and animators. It doesn't really matter if you're a hobbyist or a professional. You can get with talent and guesswork only so far. There's one point when you realize if you want to create something awesome, you need theory. And there are plenty of materials on the internet and plenty of courses to learn about 2D art and animation. The question is, how many of them are good? And the process of searching is actually quite long. At least it took for me to find someplace where it is worth to spend your time, invest your money to learn. So what I did for today is I asked 15 Latvian artists and animators, do they have any materials that they would recommend to other artists and animators? And what I got is a list. So let's go. Let's start with animation. Oldies but goodies. 60 years ago, a book was written by Richard Williams. It's called The Animator's Survival Kit, and basically it is what the book says. It is a complete overview of all the animation, physics, logics, psychology, everything. The author himself made a lot of cartoons for Disney, including I don't know if it was Disney or not, Who Framed Rabbit Rogers. There were several others. Basically the book, it has the book and the DVDs, and it goes through a lot of theory, and if you have that, it's a big leg up. Next up, well, not everyone has the time to read through a huge book. Sometimes you just need to have that leg up in like 30 minutes. So basically this is a video that goes through the 12 basic principles of animation. It's by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. And what it does, it really creatively explains the basic principles of what you have to take care of in order to make your animation very comprehensive, very interesting, and very logical. So next up is art, and in particular, what can you find in YouTube? So first, Understanding of Composition by Blender Guru. This video goes through all the principles of composition that we usually learn in the first few years of art school. It's a really good, really comprehensive tutorial, basically just one video. This YouTube user also has several other videos on the basics of art. However, if you're interested in something more than just 2D art, if you're interested in 3D, and specifically in Blender, go ahead, check out his channel, because he has a lot of videos on how to do specific object modeling, how to set up scenes, and even how to make games. Next up, an interesting YouTuber named Istebrak, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Basically what she does is she takes different artworks, not all of those artworks are professional, and she goes through the theory of art, through critiquing those artworks and redrawing them. This is very interesting, and the thing is, everyone can submit their art. So basically, you submit her your art, you ask for a critique, she goes through all that, and basically for an hour you watch how she corrects your artwork and how she critiques it, and it might help you find where are the problems that kind of don't make your art that good, but you can't find them them yourself. Also, this channel has a lot of artist journals and interviews. Next up, this channel, Pursuing Mastery by Vol and CK. This isn't really about theory. as much as motivation, the mindset of an artist, how to develop good habits, and how not to be afraid to become better, and how to start from the little and become something great. So this is where you go when you really lack that motivation and you're thinking, why am I even doing this? Okay, several videos are all good and nice, but sometimes you just need a comprehensive, well-ordered information, a course. So what can you look for online? First one is Drava Box by Ishtad Karim. I am again hoping I'm pronouncing that right. So this is what this person basically he himself, he is an artist, a professional artist, but also a programmer. And when he was studying art, as he said, I can't just feel if the art is right. I need to look at the problem and divide them into smaller problems that I can actually solve by logic. And this is what he's attempting to do with art. He approaches every subject of art from a small logical standpoint. Usually often he uses some kind of basis, figure drawings, or trying to divide it into logic segments. The thing about this site is that every course is for free, and community critiques are for free. Only critiques by him are one critique for like $10. So basically, if you have the time and you feel like you want a bit more logic into your study, then this is the place to go. Next one, Learn Squared. Now this one, however, is quite expensive. Many of the tutors that are there are some of the lead industry artists. This is one-time payment, and then you have like lifetime access to the course. And what this site does, it takes one master and one novice who is starting just in the industry, and basically what we see in the videos is how this master is teaching the novice, and basically you have a bit different point of view than if there was just a simple course by a master and you would learn just outright it. So recommended, again, name and surname I would probably have trouble saying. Intro to Environment Painting. This was recommended from the person who suggested me this specific site and who went himself through this. Next one, this one I went through myself. This is Gura Education Center by Roman Guro. He's a Ukrainian artist who has also worked in Blizzard. And what I can say about this one, these are incredibly intensive courses. Roman Guro teaches himself. There are not pre-recorded videos. Basically twice a week you have a homework, 2 lectures, sometimes there can be 3 lectures for the more intensive courses. So every lecture has a homework, and these were really intensive. Like if you have a job and something else, then getting through these were just hell. It was like, I finished it, yeah, but I did all the like at the very end he gave us 2 weeks free, and I did in that time. I was like not sleeping at all, and I did 8 homeworks during that time, and I just gave them all to him. And the first thing when he opened my letter was, "Oh shit," just swearing, because it was already late at night and he had to go through all the homeworks. What he does for each homework, he takes them, he does critique, and then he redraws your artwork so it would look professional. It's quite interesting. One thing that was a minus, Roman Guro, he speaks in English, but all the materials he gave were in Russian. And actually, though he speaks in English, somehow he's ashamed of his accent or something, I don't know, so he insists on speaking on Russian. So going through the entire course in Russian was just, it might be a problem for some. It was definitely difficult for me. Next one is my personal recommendation. It's Schoolism. These courses, a lot of the mentors are also top industry specialists. A lot of them have worked in DreamWorks, in Pixar, some of them in games. So I am going currently through Nathan Folk's courses. He's the lead DreamWorks, yeah, DreamWorks artist. And what I really liked about these, when you listen to the lectures themselves, they don't seem like over the top, too much information, you can't process it. But when it came to the homework, and you're doing the homework, the understanding of how color and light and composition works, it was just like from nowhere, it just came to you. And you are, when you are working after that, you are selecting the right colors and the right composition a lot faster. Somehow it goes like into your the feeling of art. So these ones are quite good. I'm really enjoying them, though they are also quite demanding from the side of homeworks, but nobody is really pushing you, just do them at your own pace. Sadly, they're paid, it's a monthly subscription, so not everyone can afford it. Next one, of course, online courses are all good, but we all know that finishing something that has well, nobody's checking up on you, it takes a lot of willpower. So for some people, it's better to have on-site courses. So what can we find in Latvia? The first one is by Ludmila Peret. Those are art courses here in Riga. It's traditional art. Yes, there is no digital art and there's no game art. But however, what she does, she goes through different assignments that help you understand the fundamentals of art. And of course, everything is in traditional, but it's something that you can find here, and you have to be twice a week there and work there. The next one, again, on site, again, traditional, just, yeah, most of the art is traditional. It's art studio named Idealist. It's not very far from here. I think I even passed it on my way here. It's in Old Riga. What it does, it is offering you courses on watercolor painting, calligraphy, fashion illustration, and urban sketching. Again, no game art, but the courses help you develop understanding in those fields, and again, some of the fundamentals of art. So that's it. Thank you for your attention. I hope that for someone it was helpful, and thank you. Yeah, any questions? Sorry. Yeah, it will be text. Any more questions? No?
I have lots of questions, but I will ask them after.
Okay. Thanks.
And now the announcement.
Yeah, so the news and announcements. So the BRSD contest is running right now. You can still make it, even if you start working on game today, you can still make it until Friday night and submit a game and maybe even win. So do it, and if you won't do it, then at least give some monies to the winners. And if you donate at least €1, you get a chance to vote for the winners. So that's a win-win. The next big thing is the GameDev.lv conference. So yeah, we are having a conference on 7th of April. We're having 7 international speakers, 6 international speakers, and 1 from Latvia. Actually, one of them also lives in Latvia, but we consider him international. And that will be a conference for the whole day. It will be for free, thanks to Game Insight. And we are having an after party after the event, so just come and enjoy. It will be something new for Latvia, something big for this country. I wanted to say region, but no, Estonians are making bigger events. but we will reach them someday. So the next is Hypertown. I guess not a lot of you have heard about it, but that's a Baltic Esports League final event on the 26th and 27th of May. And we are having an exhibition there and also a conference. We will try to get as many international speakers there as we can. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but maybe we will have a game jam during the event. We already have a place there for lots of developers, and it will be in BT1 in Kiipsala, and yeah, it will be open for 48 hours to everybody that is participating in the game jam. So stay tuned, and we will post more information about this event later. And the next event is on, next meetup is on 11th of April. Yeah, thanks. Did I forget something? Yeah, the game. So, this one will be really, really easy. As usual, the first one is the easy one, and the second will be a bit harder. So, be prepared. So, 2 beers. 1 beer for every correct answer. So, 3, 2, 1.
Final Fantasy.
Yes, Final Fantasy. That was an easy one. So this will be a bit harder, I hope. 3, 2, 1.
Beach volleyball?
No. Oop. Yes, Delta Force. Delta and Force. Yes. So, well, these were really quick ones. That's it. Thank you, and see you in the next meetup. Okay.